the future. And by Chrysler Corporation and its divisions, proud sponsors of the 1992 U.S. Olympic team.
Risk. As hard as it is to live with, it's impossible to live without. At Merrill Lynch, we know that risk can be dealt with. It can be managed. It can even be turned to your advantage. To do that, you need a partner. A partner who understands it and can help you turn a world of risk into a world of opportunity. Merrill Lynch. We're bullish on the future.
The first padded dash, the first shoulder harness, the first to install airbags in every car and minivan they built. The first car to offer both dual airbags and the world's only built-in child seat. At a time when it has become fashionable to hop on the safety bandwagon, we thought you'd like to know who built the bandwagon. In the car business, you lead, follow, or get out of the way.
This is an emergency. Please clear the street.
He's on the loose.
The scene here is one of total chaos.
He's out of control.
Oh my God.
He's headed your way.
He's over 100 feet tall.
And whatever you do, don't make him cranky. Walt Disney Pictures presents Rick Moranis as the father who accidentally blew up his kid. Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, rated PG. Starts Friday, July 17th at a theater near you.
I'm about to cook a low-fat feast before your very eyes, using all-natural Pam cooking spray instead of oil or butter. With Pam, nothing comes between you and the taste of your food. No funny aftertaste to cover up the flavors. And it's the only leading spray that's 100% natural. You cut down on fat and cholesterol, not on taste. With Pam, nothing comes between you and the taste of your food.
Welcome back to our coverage here in the Garden in the closing moments of this Democratic convention. The voter is now absolutely waiting for this moment. Bill Moyers, Bill Safire were just here. We were talking about the speech, and Bill Safire said something. He said, you know, that was Bill Clinton, and we talked, well, maybe it was a little too long or this or that, but earnest, issue-oriented, looking for the substance, that's sort of been Bill Clinton, and whether you want it shorter or more this or more that, what we saw was Bill Clinton.
Summed up the way he wanted to sum it up with this whole new covenant phrase and everything that it means in terms of both rights and responsibilities. He set a tone for the campaign. He set a tone for his style of governance. He said, I'm not just a policy wonk, this is what I'm all about. This is what I'm calling on America to do. It's been a while since a president has called upon America to sacrifice. Bill Clinton wants it understood that he's doing that in this speech.
You know, in the very beginning of this campaign in New Hampshire, I noticed that the two candidates who did best, Bill Clinton and Paul Tsongas, had little pamphlets that they were hawking. You could call an 800 number and get their economic plan. Tsongas's was a call to economic arms. Clinton was a new covenant. And they did very well. Now, I'm not sure how many voters actually read those documents. They were a bit deadly dull. On the other hand, they were impressed that these guys had a plan. They had specific ideas about what they were going to do, and that's what the voters in New Hampshire were looking for, because they thought George Bush doesn't know where he's going. And I had a sense that Bill Clinton was playing on some of those themes. Trust us, we have a plan, I know where I'm going, I know what to do.
This evening was an effort to put some magic to that plan. And I don't know what Bill Safire and Bill Moyer said, because I was on the floor for the balloon drop. My private tradition to his voter there, but I think that he got himself out of here pretty well tonight.
You know, CNN has upwards of 300 people at this convention. We're backstopped by our loving colleagues in Atlanta, the Washington bureaus, and certainly the New York bureau. But we're going to go hopping around on the floor down there into one of many very tireless CNN reporters, Deborah Potter.
Bernie, this was, in fact, Bill Clinton's night to grab center stage and hold on to it. A night for him to really set the tone, as you all have been discussing, and from the perspective of someone who spent the evening down here on the floor, it was clear that the tone was change. He may not have used the word as many times in his speech as some of us were expecting him to, but that was the theme. And it was the theme throughout the night, from Al Gore's rousing speech when he had the crowd chanting along with him with reference to the Republicans, it is time for them to go. And then on to the rocking music that had this hall enthralled after the speech. Fleetwood Mac, a rock and roll song. Don't worry about tomorrow, yesterday's gone. Again, a theme of change, generational change. This place was rocking and rolling as no Democratic convention I can remember in recent years. It was a night to showcase the young baby boomer ticket. Al Gore and Bill Clinton, their very attractive families, their attractive wives, standing up on the podium together, and this crowd along with them, going along with them. It was not just that kind of change, it was change in the Democratic Party as well, mentioning pro-business and values and flags. It was as though they were trying to beat the Republicans at their own game sometimes. Obviously, the reaction here on the floor to the speech, very, very positive. What else would you expect? The real question, needless to say, how it plays outside the hall, and that's what these people are waiting to see. Back to the booth.
Thanks, Deborah. And Frank says no, this is not at all the first convention you've covered, and you've worked long and hard. What about this one? Where does it fit in?
Well, there really truly is on this floor all around me a real sense of enthusiasm and even optimism. I've made it, I haven't been able to move very much here. We're jammed in, but I did a very quick survey of those around me, and I got comments like these: 2 home runs tonight, inspiring, terrific. Whatever we may think on the outside, these delegates from all different stripes are genuinely enthusiastic and extremely hopeful. As I mentioned last night, as one of them have said, we've been locked out too long, and there's a real sense here that in Clinton and Gore, they may, just may, have found the keys. One person, someone who had not come here committed to Clinton and said earlier in this convention that she didn't particularly like him or trust him, had some very interesting comments this evening as she left. She said, at this point, I may well be caught up in all the emotion of the event, but you know, I think they just may win. It's almost as if the Democrats in this room are daring to allow themselves to hope that they can break the Republican lock on the White House, but it's going to be tough. Bill Clinton says the word investment. The Republicans are going to throw the words tax and spend right back at them. So we leave this place very enthusiastic, at least the crowd. One gentleman said it's a revival meeting and a revival of the Democratic Party. Maybe wishful thinking, but that's what they're saying. Back to the booth.
The band is playing That's What Friends Are For, and these delegates are swaying back and forth. I'm glad Candy Crowley is a friend, but moreover, I'm glad she's on our team. Candy, your thoughts?
I guess my main thought right now, Bernie, is that the Democrats have learned one thing, and that is how to throw a convention. I think if you look back over conventions in the previous years, this one certainly was a show, and that's something Democrats have learned how to do. What we don't know is whether or not they have learned how to win an election. There is a genuine enthusiasm on this floor, as Frank has said. I think from talking to the delegates for the last 4 days, what I have learned is they really are enthusiastic. I think what's interesting is it is not so much Bill Clinton, because as a matter of fact, a lot of the people on these floors are more of the liberal wing of the party. These are the party regulars, the people who have been here for many, many years. What the adrenaline push is coming from, apparently, is the smell of victory. They genuinely think here is a man that might have a chance to win. For that, they're willing to put aside some of their policy differences with this man. Bill Clinton, of course, is a conservative Democrat. He's a moderate Democrat. Many of the people on this floor are liberals. However, they're willing to put that kind of thing aside and to go ahead and go along with this ticket. It's a genuinely appealing ticket and something they believe has a chance to win in November. Back to the booth.
Thanks, Candy. We saw Paul Tsongas down there between the candidates, Al Gore and Bill Clinton. And our national political correspondent, who has certainly done just that, covered the nation on the floor of this garden this week, is Gene Randall. Gene?
Catherine, a lot of closeness here on the floor. This was clearly a night Bill Clinton wanted to reintroduce himself to the American people, to cover over the scars of a sometimes bruising primary campaign. Judging by the reactions inside this arena, he did it rather well. Bill Clinton was a hit tonight. And considering that just a few short months ago, a convention like this would have been unthinkable, given the bruising quality of the campaign, it was remarkable. And even near the end of a long speech by Bill Clinton, one woman said to me he can still deliver long speeches 4 years later. Even at the end of a long speech, Bill Clinton could still bring these delegates to their feet with a chant of, "We can do it." And after this week in New York, these Democrats seem to genuinely believe that. Back to the booth.
Charles Beerbaugh, during Governor Clinton's speech, Charles was almost made to look like a sardine up there. There wasn't a single inch of space on that podium. But now, Charles, it seems like you've got a little breathing room down there.
Well, we've got a little breathing room, you're right. The question is, does Governor Clinton have a little breathing room? The weight of the party was certainly up on this podium at the end of his speech. The weight of the election is on him now. Gene mentioning the length of that speech, I caught Governor Dukakis as he was coming up here. He said he liked both speeches, didn't think the length was a problem. Maybe Bill Clinton hasn't learned anything in terms of length from that speech he gave 4 years ago. The question is, does he learn something in terms of sustaining an election? The sense was coming in here that Bill Clinton had to really shine. And then you had the situation with Ross Perot bowing out this morning. In the early going, it seemed like perhaps Ross Perot had stolen a headline again from Bill Clinton. But he may have done Bill Clinton a favor, because George Bush was up on a mountain in Wyoming scrambling to get a message out that was appealing to the Perot folks, whereas Bill Clinton had this massive stage here in New York to get his word out first. And both he and Senator Gore made a point of appealing to the Perot supporters. And I talked with Jim Carville, one of the gurus of the Clinton campaign, as this event was ending here. And what Mr. Carville said was, 2 months ago, we were down at 25 points, and everybody was saying Perot was keeping us out of the headlines. We couldn't get into the headlines. And now tonight, we're up 23 points, and Perot is out of the race. It's a two-man race. The Democrats say they like it, but the Republicans say that too. That's the view from the podium. One last time, up to the booth.
Thank you very much, Charles. We try to keep technical jargon out of what we do, and we cover stories for you, but you may have heard references to something called RF, radio frequency. We have RF cameras, and basically they're on the floor and they beam signals to receivers. One of the crews, Tyrone Edwards and Tim Wall. He's wearing the CNN cap there. And our technicians, Jeff Kinney and Susan Minuet. That's Tyrone with the camera on his shoulder. And there is Chris Turner. And these are the men and women who are responsible for putting you right into this convention. Catherine and I will be right back after this local cable break.
$2200. I'm Roger Greenberg. At Greenberg and Betterman, we'll make sure you get everything you're entitled to, under the law. So call us at 589-2200. So call us at 589.
How can Sears offer pest control that lasts a whole year? By using a 7-step program that leaves bugs with no place to hide. Outside, we set up 3 barriers to keep crawling pests from entering your home. Inside, we apply 2 treatments that kill bugs in their favorite hiding places, like your attic and inside walls. Finally, we have 2 ways to protect your kitchen, bathrooms, and other areas where you and your family live. Sears' 7-step treatment gets rid of bugs for a whole year, because some things just don't belong in your home.
Listening? We are. We're America's private health insurers. Americans tell us they're feeling squeezed by soaring healthcare costs. Well, we're doing something about it. We're negotiating savings and discounts with doctors, hospitals, and drug companies. We're eliminating costly paperwork, streamlining. We're insisting on new ways of providing care and demanding cost consciousness. More efficiency from everyone in the system. HIAA, Prescriptions for Change.
Today, 800-257-1257, toll free, 257-1257 for your free personal coverage proposal. No obligation, no pressure. Discover how this quality term life insurance could save you as much as 50% off your premiums every year for the rest of your life. 800-257-1257, toll free. Call Garden State Life Insurance for your free information today, 257-1257.
This is CNN.
We conclude this portion of our coverage of these Democrats in Madison Square Garden with some sights and sounds of the past week.
The 41st Quadrennial National Convention of the Democratic Party of the United States will come to order.
All right, ready to go? Arkansas.
Arkansas, home of the next president of the United States, is present.
Connecticut present. Connecticut's apparently present.
My name is Ann Richards, and I am pro-choice, and I vote. We're tired of hearing about the 80s. They're over. We're tired of hearing about the Reagan era. It's over. And as far as this White House is concerned, honey, you can turn out the lights. The party's over.
Read our lips. No second term. Unemployment is up. The deficit grows. Healthcare and college costs skyrocket. What did you do about it, George Bush? You waffle and wiggle and waver.
If Ross Perot is an outsider, if he's an outsider, folks, I'm from Brooklyn.
So God bless America, land that I love.
Exactly 4 years ago, my daughter died of AIDS. She did not survive the Reagan administration. I am here because my son and I may not survive 4 more years of leaders who say they care but do nothing.
Let me give you a personal testimony. I've known Bill Clinton for more than 15 years. This year, he has endured and survived the false and misleading political attacks on him, his family, and his character. I tell you, as you all know, he's a man of honesty and integrity.
Democrats, if we pursue that ethic, that love ethic, that care ethic, we will win and deserve to win. Stand tall, never surrender. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep
What we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another.
my brother Bobby reached across the deepest divides of American life. He taught us that the things which bind us as one people are stronger than the things which drive us apart. It's time for someone smart enough to know, strong enough to do, sure enough to lead, the comeback kid, a new voice for a new America. Because I love New York, because I love America, I nominate for the office of the President of the United States, the man from Hope, Arkansas, Governor Bill Clinton.
Now, who is ready to nominate the next President of the United States? Arkansas.
Bill Clinton's mother, Mrs. Virginia Kelly.
Arkansas proudly cast our 48 votes for our favorite son and my son, Bill Clinton.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly.
Ohio wants change. America wants change. And Ohio cast 144 votes for the next President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yo, George, get a grip, get a life, get another job.
In a wise and decisive move, Bill Clinton selected Al Gore as his running mate, just as they helped to transform the old South into the new South. Bill Clinton and Al Gore will now help to transform the old America into a new America. And I so move that the rules be suspended and that Albert Gore be nominated by acclamation.
All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it, and Senator Al Gore is nominated Vice President.
I believe in my heart that together, Bill Clinton and I offer the American people the best chance we have as a nation to move forward in the right direction again. I want to make a special plea to you this evening. Stay involved. You have already changed politics in this country for the better. Keep on fighting for change. This new covenant simply asks us all to be Americans again. Old-fashioned Americans for a new time. Opportunity, responsibility, community. When we pull together, America will pull ahead. We didn't get into this mess overnight, and we won't get out of it overnight. But we can do it with commitment, creativity, diversity, and drive. We can do it.
Well, as they do every 4 years, the people of the United States of America about the business of deciding who will be the next president of the United States. All this week from Madison Square Garden, we have brought you the Democrats who tonight concluded their convention. Next month, we'll be in Houston to report on the Republican convention and Republicans as they work about the process. We're halfway through the process. We have 4 more months to go.
You know, Bernie, despite all the foibles, the frustrations, the failings from time to time, Thank goodness this process is still one of the defining moments in our great democracy. Let's do it all again in Houston.
Absolutely. I'm Bernard Shaw.
I'm Catherine Cryer. Capitol Gang is next.
Revolutionary Goodyear AquaTread radio. Its advanced deep groove aqua channel channels water away as you drive.
It makes sense the way the water flows away.
The water goes right off the tire.
The water flows away.
The all-new, all-season AquaTread radio.
Only from Goodyear. Oh, I get a feeling of good stability and security.
Another reason we say the best tires in the world.
It does what they say it'll do.
Have Goodyear written all over them.
They're the best tires I've ever had.
This awful itch. Won't anything stop it fast?
Lanacaine will. Lanacaine shuts off the itch like a switch. Fast. Only Lanacaine cream works on contact with the itch nerves that cause every itch. Benadryl can't. Even the strongest hydrocortisones can't. But Lanacaine will. So for the fastest relief of every itch, get Lanacaine.
Lanacaine does shut off the itch. Like a switch. Fast.
New Yoplait fat-free, fruit in the bottom, active yogurt cultures, not 1 ounce of fat. That's why Mary Hamilton does it every day. Smooth, creamy Yoplait. Do it for you.
Introducing new Lemon Fresh Spray and Wash. At last, the proven stain-removing power of spray and wash with the freshness of real lemon. For a whole new way to get out what America gets into.
I try to ignore my sensitive teeth, but hot and cold foods hurt.
Don't ignore your sensitive teeth. They can be more serious than you think. Pain from one sensitive tooth can start the domino effect. Make you stop brushing, lead to gingivitis, periodontal disease, even tooth loss. Dentists recommend Sensodyne most for sensitive teeth.
My dentist was right. Now my teeth don't feel sensitive.
Don't ignore sensitive teeth. Sensodyne helps stop the pain and the domino effect.
Bill Clinton lights up the garden and lights up the polls, and the three-way race becomes a two-way race as the can-do businessman Ross Perot breaks his promise to his followers and quits. Good evening from Madison Square Garden. I'm Lou Waters. The convention and the collapse of the Perot campaign have combined to give Bill Clinton a huge lead over President Bush in the run for the White House. That, according to a new CNN USA Today Gallup poll taken tonight. And we remind you, this is a snapshot in time, but it shows Bill Clinton capturing 56% of the vote, Bush 33%, with 11% saying they're undecided. The poll also shows Clinton, not Bush, is the early benefactor of Perot's demise, with 53% of the Perot supporters saying they'll vote for Clinton, 35% for Bush, 12% still undecided. Here in Madison Square Garden, Bill Clinton formally accepted his party's nomination for president tonight after a long and sometimes rocky journey. The music blared and the balloons tumbled from the ceiling after Clinton delivered a 54-minute speech laying out his vision for a new covenant and a new, more moderate Democratic Party. He also appealed for supporters of Ross Perot to join the Democrats.
But my fellow Democrats, it's time for us to realize that we've got some changing to do too. There is not a program in government for every problem. And if we want to use government to help people, we have got to make it work again. Because we are committed in this convention and in this platform to making these changes, we are, as Democrats, in the words that Ross Perot himself spoke today, a revitalized Democratic Party. I am well aware that all those millions of people who rallied to Ross Perot's cause wanted to be in an army of patriots for change. Tonight I say to them, join us and together we will revitalize America.
Battered by questions about his character throughout the primaries, Clinton and the Democrats were determined to recast his image in a better light tonight. And to do that, they used a slickly produced videotape telling his personal story. Before Mr. Clinton's speech, running mate Al Gore accepted the nomination for vice president and said he and Clinton represent a new generation of change.
The American people are disgusted with excuses and tired of blame. They know that throughout American history, each generation has passed on leadership to the next. That time has come again. The time for a new generation of leadership for the United States of America to take over from George Bush and Dan Quayle. And you know what that means for them. It's time for them to go.
The Clinton and Bush campaigns are hastily rewriting their campaign strategies tonight after Ross Perot's stunning announcement in Dallas this morning that he is ending his never-declared run for the White House.
These people love their country. This whole thing was motivated by love of country, not personal. You know, I don't have any drive to be president of the United States. They don't have any drive to stop doing what they normally do, except they're worried about where we are and where their country's going. But if we can only be disruptive, we don't want to do that.
We're counting on you to go the distance.
But all the way along in our meetings, we agreed we did not want to hurt this country. We want to help this country. Now, let's say we go the distance. This is not an athletic contest. This is something at a very critical time in our country's history. If you will ever take 15 minutes to look at the charts and graphs of where our economy is and so on and so forth, you'll realize we have got major problems that we need to deal with right here at home. So this is not an athletic contest. This is a program to say what is really good for the country. I am absolutely convinced, or I wouldn't be standing here today, that putting this thing in the House of Representatives is negative and disruptive, and we shouldn't do it.
In the past couple of weeks, President Bush's men have called Perot everything from paranoid to a temperamental tycoon. But breaking away from his Wyoming fishing vacation today, Bush actively courted Perot's supporters and predicted Perot's demise would help his struggling re-election campaign.
Haven't had a chance to talk to any strategists about that, but clearly a two-way race is more traditional in the sense of American politics, and I think in the final analysis that I'll win this race. I think people will look at the big picture, the whole picture, and I believe we'll win. And I think our values are right. I think the fact that kids go to bed with a little less fear about nuclear war these days, I think that's extraordinarily positive. I think the economy's tough, but I think what we've proposed to correct it is going to prove to be better than the opponents. So I'm prepared to take my case to the American people in the fall.
And that's all for now from Madison Square Garden. We'll be back for a live edition of Inside Politics beginning at 12:30 Eastern. The Capitol Gang is next from the convention floor.
In a balloon, how romantic.
5 hours? What about my diarrhea?
Don't worry, honey. I brought the Fermitine.
Still going. Nothing outlasts the Energizer. They keep going and going.
Gee, honey, great bacon.
It's not bacon.
Not bacon?
That's right. 100% soy breakfast strips with no cholesterol.
Still going. Nothing outlasts the Energizer battery. It keeps going and going.
I use a shampoo for dandruff, but my scalp still itches like crazy.
You need new Scalpicin, the revolutionary scalp medicine for deep scalp itch, not ordinary dandruff. Scalpicin is not a shampoo. It's a clear liquid you don't wash away like shampoo. Apply Scalpicin anytime for deep scalp itch relief with medicine chosen by doctors over all these dandruff shampoo formulas. Scalpicin penetrates to relieve the itch and help prevent flaking.
The itch is gone.
New Scalpicin, the scalp medicine for deep scalp itch.
New Yoplait Parfait Style Yogurt.
What's to like? 3 layers. Real creamy. Fun to eat. Oh, it's low fat, too. So, how do you like that? Parfait style Yoplait. Do it for you.
The break is over, so Atlanta goes back to work. All-Stars Pendleton, Lavin, Gant, and Smoltz look to work another second-half miracle. Braves and Astros, 8:30 Eastern tomorrow night on TBS.
When important people have something to say, they say it on CNN. When today's newsmakers have a story to tell, they tell it on CNN. When world leaders have a point to make, they make it on CNN. Get in touch with the people shaping the news. Watch Evans and Novak.
I don't think we'd end up in a civil war. I think
Newsmaker Saturday.
It was a choice. It was a tough choice. I chose the Indiana National Guard.
Newsmaker Sunday. Every weekend when important people have something to say, they say it on CNN.
Live from the Democratic Convention in New York, it's the Capitol Gang.
Welcome to a special edition of Capitol Gang from Madison Square Garden, where tonight the Democrats ended their most harmonious convention in years by nominating Al Gore for Vice President and Bill Clinton for President. With me tonight, I'm Al Hunt. With me tonight are Mark Shields, Margaret Warner, Robert Novak, and the Democratic Senate leader, George Mitchell of Maine. George, thanks for being with us tonight.
My pleasure, Al. Thanks for having me.
It must feel terrific.
It does feel very good. A great convention and a great start to the campaign.
Mark Shields, let me start with you. Bill Clinton, terribly important speech tonight. How did he do?
Every speech, Al, has to have a face on it. Bill Clinton put his own face on it. He told about his own values coming from experiences of his own personal life as an antidote to that sense of being privileged. I thought it worked. It was the end of the celebration of individualism that Bob Novak has prospered under for 12 years, and a commitment to a sense of community responsibility, and that each of us has a moral responsibility to make tomorrow better. I liked it, and I'm sure Bob did too.
Bob, there's a pool going on right here on the convention floor among some delegates as to how long it'll take for you to say it was a bad speech. So go ahead.
I would never say that. I would say it was a long speech. I don't think so. I don't think Governor Clinton is capable of making a short speech. I think he was continuing his nominating speech from 4 years ago, as he said. The problem was that I was on the floor near the end of the speech, and even the delegates couldn't wait till it was over, and I imagine people in their homes were even more anxious. But Mark is right. This is a continuation of the theme of this convention, which is taking a very liberal program and wrapping it up in conservative rhetoric. Does it work? Well, who knows? But it's a lot smarter than actually admitting that it's liberal.
Well, George, I don't know whether people wanted to be over or not, but afterwards, by the latest CNN poll, Bill Clinton is still 23 points ahead of George Bush in a one-on-one race. Seemed to be pretty successful, wouldn't it?
I think it was a great speech and a great convention. I would take those poll numbers with some caution. I think there's an experience that shows that at the time of the convention, the numbers go up for the nominee. They then settle back down. I think it's going to be a tough race, but I believe Governor Clinton and Senator Gore will be elected. What I liked about the speech, frankly, was the emphasis on the need for economic growth and job creation. The Democratic Party has done well nationally when we have, in fact, and have been perceived as the party of economic growth and opportunity. I think this is traditional Democratic growth policy. I think that's what the country needs, and I think it's the reason why Bill Clinton will be elected president.
George, I thought that was one of the striking facets of the speech. And Margaret, the other, however, I think was what Mark touched on a moment ago. Bill Clinton told us more than he ever has before who he was, about his difficult childhood, without seeming maudlin. I mean, don't you think he pulled that off?
No, I do, Al. And, you know, the Clinton people have been surprised to see in focus groups and so on that most voters think he's a rich kid whose positions just come from political convenience. He needed to show that all of his policies and his belief in activist government come from his own life, that he's not a guy who's just going to say, I'm the education president. He's a guy whose life was remade by education, that he's not just going to talk about health care, but that his mother's life was saved because of good health care. So I do think he did that pretty successfully.
So Bob,
if I can interrupt this
you can ask me this since you're from Illinois. How did it play in Peoria?
I don't think it played very well in Peoria. I don't think anybody could listen that long. I will say this, that there is in there a government. He says government there shouldn't be a government solution for every problem, but that's exactly what it does. And I'll tell you something else, George, I think you'll agree with me on this. If you heard Richard Nixon put in all that stuff about his family and his troubles and growing up, you'd say, cut that stuff out, Nixon. Get down to the basics. But when the Democrats do it, they say, oh, isn't that nice? It's just, I think it was more.
Bob have a point, Mark? Bob has a point, of course, Al, and it's always the wrong one. I would say most speeches are written by rhetorical grave robbers. This one was. There were strains of Jack Kennedy. There were strains of Ronald Reagan.
Even
there were strains of Jerry Ford.
FDR.
I mean, there was a lot of borrowed prose in there, and I thought it worked for him. When it's borrowed like that, it isn't plagiarized, it's eclectic. I want to ask one question, though, of you and George, though, and Margaret, and that is the biggest cheer he got in the hall was he said he was pro-choice. And that's been the litmus test of this convention. Is that going to get as big a cheer in the nation in Peoria?
Well, I'll tell you what I think. I think in a three-way race, it was maybe not a big winner. In a two-way race, I think it's a bigger winner. But let me say one thing. I think the Democrats made one major mistake in this convention, and I think they stiffed the governor of Pennsylvania. Yeah. I think that was a mistake. And, George, I think even you can agree that it's a mistake to allow a pro-choice woman from Pennsylvania who's a Republican speak and not let the Democratic governor speak.
Yeah. I think it will be an important issue in the campaign to the president's detriment, because there very clearly is a substantial majority of Americans who favor the status quo, that is, maintaining the law as it has existed for the past 20 years under Roe v. Wade. But I want to get back to the speech. I think the personal aspects were important. I think the video was good in that regard. But to me, the most persuasive thing about this speech and this campaign is the emphasis on the need for economic growth. The president has presided over the worst economic performance in 60 years. That's his responsibility, and he doesn't have a policy or a program to change that. Governor Clinton has laid one out. You may disagree about some part of it. I'm sure Bob does. Others will disagree, but at least he's laid out a plan for economic growth. I think that's going to decide the election in his favor.
Margaret, there was another huge issue today. I mean, Ross Perot dropped out. Now, you know, Bob Novak and Mark Shields and I have to follow you because you were the only one who had any, even semi-prescience that the Perot candidacy might flounder. First of all, were you surprised? And secondly, tell me what you think it means for November.
Well, I don't think any of us were surprised because the rumors have been around for a couple of days. I think in the short term, it looks like maybe it's good for Bush because there are a number of states that Perot had taken away from Bush. And so if you're looking at strictly electoral strategy, it looks bad for Clinton. But I think over the long term, it's good for Clinton because now he can run unopposed for the change vote. And if he can turn this into an election about change, I think he wins. If Bush succeeds in turning it into a race about risk, say, then he may lose. But I think really it gives Clinton a nice opening to go ahead and seek a mandate. And I think in the end it's probably better for the country. I don't think it would have been good for the country to have a House of Representatives.
George Bush, get you back, Bob.
Let me say a couple of things. In the first place, I think Mr. Perot, who I have admired, I thought he was bringing something to the political scene. I think his whole performance was outrageous. He would not spend the money he promised he was going to spend. A lot of people don't think he ever intended to spend that $100 million. And he comes out there and says he's not going to go in because the Democratic Party might win the election and send into the House of Representatives. What nonsense that was. He betrayed all those millions of volunteers. The second outrageous thing is the Republicans coming out and saying what a wonderful campaign this was when they had been jumping on him and trashing him for weeks. The Democrats are a little hypocritical on this because they suddenly threw something into Governor Clinton's speech saying something nice about him, but they're not a tenth as hypocritical as the Republicans who have been trashing Perot.
Well, former Education Secretary Bill Bennett said today, I think quite accurately and commendably, that it was a travesty that George Bush was calling Ross Perot.
Well, Al, I'll tell you, there's two things. Peter Hart put it very well. He thought that Ross Perot...
Peter Hart, Democratic pollster.
Democratic pollster and pollster for the Wall Street Journal, NBC
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that plug.
Said that he entered the race too lately and he left it too lately. And I thought it was a very good point. Add to that, I don't think hypocrisy wore a party label today. I mean, they were like unseemly suitors for the new widow, each of them showing up. The Democrats have been trashing him just as badly in private, if not in public. Marlon Fitzwater had savaged him. Both parties were kind of there. The widows knew what can we do to take over the estate? And I thought it was unseemly and the worst of all politics.
Like a scene from the Odyssey, wasn't it, Martin?
Unseemly what?
Like a scene from the Odyssey, wasn't it?
I hadn't thought of that, Bob, but it's a nice
George,
analogy.
give us your view on Perot dropping out and what it means. And
the conventional wisdom is that it's better for the Republicans because he was taking more away from Bush, but I agree with Margaret's analysis. I think the American people have made clear their desire for change. Despite all of the Perot, the Clinton stories, the real significant feature of the American political process now is the weakness of the incumbent president and the desire for change. 2/3 of Americans want change. Governor Clinton, his task now, and I believe he's gone a long way toward accomplishing tonight, is to persuade the American people that he is, in fact, the agent of change. And I think that will persuade a large proportion of the Perot voters to support Governor Clinton.
Well, the question is, George, do they want change if it's redistribution of income and spending more and more money for the cities, which is what you people admit you're going to do?
You know?
They want change of an economic policy that has produced the worst economic record since Herbert Hoover was in the White House. The president has no plan for change, no proposal for change. Governor Clinton has laid out a specific, detailed plan how we will reinvest and rebuild America and create jobs.
Bob,
that, I think, will decide this election.
Bob, let me give you a transportation lesson. Governor Clinton said tonight that he was going to keep taxes down for those who drive pickup trucks and increase taxes for those who drive limousines. You drive limousine. Most of those people out there drive pickup trucks.
I drive an American.
I want to say one thing.
I drive an American sport car.
And it's a limousine. I want to pick up one point, Margaret. Margaret, I think you're right about the electoral college strategy near term in the South. I think it probably does help Bush in some states where Clinton might have been competitive. But let's not forget the big enchilada. California, 54 electoral votes. I think Bill Clinton now is a clear, a overwhelming favorite in the state of California.
I think it's fair to say, Al, that the Republicans had basically written off California going in a three-way, and I think in a two-way they don't look any better. But you got to look at states like Florida now and say that what were available in a three-way don't look nearly as attractive right now.
Sure.
To the Democrats.
And you probably throw Texas in too.
Let me just add one thing. I think that the President Bush is going to have a tough time winning this election. He's very unpopular, but the Democrats are experts at blowing elections, and that is a track record.
There's no doubt about that. There's one other person we have to mention tonight, Albert Gore, your colleague, George Mitchell. Good speech?
Very good speech. He's a very, very intelligent man, thoughtful, hardworking, articulate. I think he's a great addition to the ticket. It combines both youth, experience, the impression and the reality of strength, and I think the environmental feature. He's the best-known environmental supporter in the Senate, one of the best in the country, will add a dimension to the Clinton campaign.
We only have about 30 seconds left, so very quickly. Margaret,
I want to make one quick point. Oh, I wasn't going to talk about Gore. I was going to make this point that 70% of the Perot voters think Perot did it for his own personal reasons, and the danger is the cynicism among those
Mark
voters.
On Gore?
Al, on Al Gore, the star of the campaign will be Albert Gore III. That kid is an all-time. It's in the bloodline, but he is good.
Let me just say that I think maybe that Senator Gore's Senate solemnity is going to wear pretty thin, but nobody pays any attention to vice presidential candidates anyway.
Well, I want to say,
I want to
go back to Mark Shields. I think that's the high point and a good way to end this evening. I want to thank you for being with us from Madison Square Garden, and please tune in on Saturday night. We'll have James Carville, the top political strategist for Bill Clinton on the Capitol Gang. Thanks a lot. It's been a terrific week.
Thank you, Al. Thank you. Thank you, George. Good to have you. Good.
Do you ever feel like you've been riding a bicycle with square wheels? Now, thanks to an innovation in bicycling, you can ride with greater comfort and safety. Introducing Wonder Ride, a shock absorber specially designed for bicycles. Wonder Ride absorbs the bumps and jolts that come up through the bicycle frame before they reach the rider. The result is a more stable ride. Wonder Ride is easy to install. Simply remove the existing seat post, attach to the seat clamp, then reinsert into the frame. Riding a bicycle is one of the healthiest exercises, so don't let road shock take all the fun out of it. Wonder Ride comes in 3 weight ranges. Order today for only $19.95. Here's how.
Have your credit card ready and call toll-free 1-800-257-1257. That's 1-800-257-1257. Or send $19.95 plus $4.95 shipping to Wonder Ride, P.O. Box 8250, Atlanta, Georgia 30306. Sorry, no COD orders.
This is CNN.
In the name of the hard-working Americans who make up our forgotten middle class, I proudly accept your nomination for President of the United States.
Bill Clinton takes his place as the Democrats' standard bearer, and he takes a commanding lead in our new poll.
I believe it would be disruptive for us to continue our program, since this program would obviously put it in the House of Representatives and be disruptive to the country and the states. So therefore, I will not become a candidate.
After urging supporters to stay in the ring with him, Ross Perot throws in the towel. It's all part of Inside Politics 92.
From the Democratic National Convention in New York, this is Inside Politics 92 with Blue Waters.
Hello, if you weren't convinced this was one of the most volatile political years in memory, reflect on the events of this day. Bill Clinton, wounded and even written off early in the primary season, triumphantly accepted the Democratic presidential nomination tonight. Hours earlier, Ross Perot, the non-politician who became the great White House hope for many Americans, stunningly ended his campaign before it officially began. And with Perot out of the race, a CNN USA Today Gallup poll taken today shows Clinton now holds a 23-point lead over President Bush. We begin our coverage with a closer look at the survey results. Here's CNN's Charles Feldman.
When Ross Perot first indicated he might run for president, analysts tried to figure out what a 3-way race for the White House would mean. But with Perot bowing out even before he officially threw his hat in, a new CNN USA Today Gallup poll taken Thursday shows if the election was held now, 56% of those questioned say they'd vote for Governor Bill Clinton, while 33% say they'd vote for President Bush. What's more, the poll shows that more Perot supporters are going to Clinton than President Bush, the president getting 35% of the Perot group, while Governor Clinton gets 53%. The telephone poll of 602 registered voters nationwide also shows that more people have a favorable image of Bill Clinton than President Bush. 37% of those polled view the president favorably, 56% do not, while 59% have a favorable view of Bill Clinton compared to 29% who have an unfavorable opinion.
Bill Clinton is enjoying a big advantage in a 2-way race against George Bush. Among all registered voters, Clinton is running 23 points ahead of Bush. But the real importance is, what are the former Perot supporters doing? They are responding like other Americans positively to Bill Clinton. The Democrats are inviting the Perot supporters to support Bill Clinton as the candidate of change, and they appear to be responding positively to that appeal.
Among those who were Perot supporters, 51% say they feel betrayed, and the majority of those polled don't buy Perot's explanation of why he chose not to run. When making his announcement that he would not run for president, Perot said he felt he was a beneficial force this election year. The poll shows that 73% of those questioned agree that Perot's campaign was good for the nation. Charles Feldman, CNN, New York.
For more perspective on the poll numbers and this whirlwind political day, we're joined by public opinion expert Bill Snyder, who you saw in that report. What startled you the most about these poll numbers?
Well, I think it's interesting that overwhelmingly the voters say that it's a good thing that Perot ran, although they're divided over whether he should have continued to run or declared his candidacy or do what he actually did, which is decide not to run. A lot of people weren't supporting him, but they thought that he brought something important to this campaign, and I think he did. In a way, it's a real shame that the professionals ended up triumphing. The system worked, and it really beat him down. He was trying to run as a non-professional. The people who were supporting him were citizen volunteers, and in a way, his departure from the race shows there really isn't any room for non-professionals, for citizen activists in a campaign. They just can't beat the odds. We have a politics today that's dominated by professional politicians, professional campaign consultants, and a lot of voters don't like that.
Am I naive, or with this public disgust for professional politicians and Bill Clinton being the consummate professional politician, that they would, and granted this is only a snapshot in time, but that they would drift to Clinton so quickly?
Well, Clinton has frantically tried to change his image. He doesn't want to appear to be a typical politician, and in a sense that was the worst problem he had to overcome. You know, after his troubles in the early part of the campaign, a lot of people didn't object to any of the specifics. They don't care what or when he smoked anything or whether he had an affair some years ago. But they said, you know, the way he got out of it was so slick and so evasive that he just proved that he's a typical politician. Particularly the statement, "I didn't inhale," struck a lot of people as proving that he was slick, evasive, and possibly a liar. The same thing they hold against George Bush, who said, "I won't raise your taxes," and then he did. Clinton is trying to get out of that burden, to show the people he's not a typical politician. He said several times in his speech, I'm an outsider, it's the politicians you don't trust, as if he wanted to distance himself from his own career.
17 points ahead Dukakis was in '88. Right. 23 points ahead. Can you compare the two in any way? Is this good news for Clinton or not good news?
I think it's very good news for Bill Clinton. He's gotten a big boost out of this convention. Somebody must have been watching. They said there was no news. Well, in a sense, for a political party, no news is good news, because when there's news at a convention, it usually means conflict and disruption. Voters like to see a well-run convention. I think some people were watching this. They were reading their newspapers. They got the word was out. And I think what was most effective about all of this was, frankly, the Bush bashing. It reminded voters that George Bush is, in most voters' opinion, a failed president. The economy is not on track. They see fundamental problems in the country. Most voters tell the pollsters they do not think George Bush deserves to be reelected. And this convention, if it didn't convince voters that Bill Clinton was a different man, it at least convinced voters that they didn't want to give George Bush a second term.
Now, this poll, as I understand, was taken before the speech was delivered?
That's right. The poll was taken early this evening.
What about the effectiveness of the speech? Did he inoculate himself in any way? Did he launch himself in any new way?
I think the speech had some interesting points in it. Most people thought it was overly long. There were some good lines, particularly his discussion of why the Republicans always want to divide Americans into us and them, and the Democrats believe there is no them, there's only us. That was a good speech. It was a bit too long, and it went a bit slowly, I thought. So I'm not sure how effective the speech was, but I'll tell you something. The video about Clinton's biography, the story he told about his life, effectively presented a Bill Clinton that most Americans don't know. And the same way Al Gore is talking about his family, the near tragedy of the loss of his son, I think it gave people a different picture of these candidates. I don't know that the speech was that terrific, but the biography of these two candidates was very effective.
Now, Bill Clinton and Al Gore board the bus tomorrow. They're going to start campaigning right away, something Dukakis did not do in '88. Right. What's the strategy now for the Democrats?
Well, they have to figure out a whole new strategy. What it means is it's back to a two-candidate race. They're going to have to figure out how to compete in the South and the West. They have two Southerners on the ticket. Can they really take the South away from George Bush? California is the big state, the battleground state of this election. Al Gore has an issue that works in California, the environment. And you know what George Bush is doing? He's heading straight for the South. He knows the campaign is starting. He wants to sew up that Southern conservative base that normally goes Republican because he's worried about it.
Bill Clinton, thanks. Been a great week. Up next on Inside Politics, Clinton's crowning moment at Madison Square Garden, the speech and the celebration.
Like new blue jeans and old memories, some things were made to fade, but not Dutch boy, not the kid, not on your life, no way, Jose, gonna stick with you right and clear, year after year. Don't stop
After examining, testing, analyzing, it's a fact. You can buy new Preparation H hydrocortisone cream with the maximum strength available without a prescription. It has a level of medicine that was prescribed by doctors for years. New Preparation H hydrocortisone cream. It's new, it's maximum strength, and it effectively relieves problem itch. New Preparation H hydrocortisone cream. Prescription strength without a prescription.
Who are you going to call the most this month?
Most.
Good question. Isabel. With Sprint's new program, The Most, you'll automatically save on whoever you call the most each month.
I call my lawyer the most.
You'll save even more when the person you call the most is another Sprint customer.
Claire, she lives in Arkansas. I don't know.
So now it's easy to save on whoever you call the most.
My brother-in-law, Paul, or Bob.
Even if you have no idea who that is.
Before I proceed, I should acknowledge that was Bill Schneider and not Bill Clinton I was talking to a moment ago. I do know the difference between the two men. In accepting the nomination for president tonight, Bill Clinton shared his vision of change for America and the bio of his hard-scrabble life, message that struck a chord with Democrats seeking a fighter and a winner. CNN's Dan Blackburn joins us from Clinton's New York headquarters.
Lou, it's pretty quiet here at Clinton's New York headquarters. The candidate for both president and vice president, both of them not here yet. They're actually at a fundraising event for the Democratic Party, one that is exceeding their wildest expectations. They expected to raise about $2 million at the event they're attending now, a private event. It looks like they're going to raise $3.5 million. So things are a little calm here at the moment, but you can be sure they'll pick up, led by the candidate himself.
For Bill Clinton, it was the political night of his life, and it called for a speech to match. This was his opportunity to present himself to the American people as he wants them to see him. He began with a filmed biography of his journey from the small town of Hope, Arkansas.
I still believe in the promise of America, and I still believe in a place called Hope.
That theme of promise and hope was woven through Clinton's acceptance speech, and it was grounded in a direct appeal to middle America.
I am a product of that middle class, and when I am president, you will be forgotten no more.
Much was said about family, a subject likely to become a central theme of the fall campaign.
I want an America where family values live in our actions, not just in our speeches. An America that includes every family, every traditional family, and every extended family.
Presenting what he called a new covenant, Clinton kept the focus on domestic issues.
The world needs a strong America, but we have learned that strength begins at home.
Clinton also sought to take advantage of Ross Perot's departure from the presidential race by making a direct appeal to Perot's supporters.
I am well aware that all those millions of people who rallied to Ross Perot's cause wanted to be in an army of patriots for change. Tonight I say to them, join us, and together we will revitalize America.
As Clinton ended his address, he was joined on stage first by his running mate, Tennessee Senator Al Gore, and then by their families, and finally by much of the leadership of the Democratic Party for a celebration that they all hope will prove to be a forerunner of an even bigger party in November.
And so Bill Clinton leaves this convention tonight with a substantial lead in the polls and only one candidate in opposition to him instead of two, which was the case when the convention began. And next for him, an 8-state bus tour right into the heart of middle America. I'm Dan Blackburn, CNN, live at Clinton headquarters.
All right, Dan, for Tennessee Senator Al Gore tonight, a vice presidential nomination by acclamation, followed by an intensely personal acceptance speech. He kicked off his address with a quip about dreaming of being a warm-up act for Elvis, a play on one of Bill Clinton's nicknames. Gore bridged into an attack on the Bush Quayle team, repeating over and over, it is time for them to go. The VP nominee proceeded to pitch for the man at the top of the Democratic ticket.
In 1992, our challenge is not to elect the last president of the 20th century, but to elect the first president of the 21st century, President Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton has a plan that offers real answers for the real problems of real people. A bold new economic strategy to rebuild this country and put our people back to work.
Gore, who also appealed to Perot supporters to keep on fighting for change, shared the evening spotlight with his wife Tipper and their 4 children. Ross Perot's decision to opt out of the '92 presidential race came nearly 5 months after he electrified the political world by getting into it. The tales on his bombshell pullout from CNN's Tony Clark in Dallas.
We want Ross! Ross Perot's supporters simply wouldn't accept the fact that he's quit. Thursday night outside Perot's Dallas headquarters, they chanted, they cheered, they sang in hopes of getting Perot back in the ring. We won't go, Ross Perot! We won't go, Ross Perot! The phone bank was flooded with calls from supporters unbelieving and unwilling to accept the campaign's end.
If we get enough people writing letters and protesting, we might can get him back on.
Perot's decision came as a surprise to the workers. Campaign manager Tom Luce learned of Perot's decision in a late Wednesday night meeting at Perot's home with a half dozen of the campaign's top officials. The hour-long meeting was businesslike. But Thursday morning, the emotions poured out.
But let me say, really hang in there. It's okay.
It was a sad end to a campaign that seemed to soar so high and hit such a responsive chord across the country.
If we don't do it, we're not going to leave our children the kind of country our parents left us. It's that simple.
But the protests, criticisms, internal strife, and campaign missteps created too much of an obstacle to go on. Former campaign co-chair Ed Rollins, who quit just a day earlier, said the campaign wasn't fun anymore for Perot.
He didn't like the scrutiny. He felt there was a great unfairness to it all, that he had a different story, that he really wanted to talk about where the country should be going, and everything seemed to be a distraction, including what was going on within his own campaign.
In his announcement dropping out of the race, Perot said he felt a 3-man presidential race would now end up in Congress. He wanted the people, rather than the politicians, to pick the president.
This is not an athletic contest. This is a program to say what is really good for the country. I am absolutely convinced, or I wouldn't be standing here today, that putting this thing in the House of Representatives is negative and disruptive, and we shouldn't do it.
The hardest part of quitting for Perot, according to close friend and senior aide Mort Meyerson, was the effect it would have on the volunteers.
He had 2 bad choices. One was, would he hurt the volunteers who have put so much effort in this? He would hate to do that. Would he do something that in his judgment's not good for the country? That's a larger question. He came to the decision that the country came first.
Perot said he spent about $10 million in his 5-month-long run for the White House. Now, he says, he'll go back to work. I've got to pay the bills, he said. Campaign workers plan to spend the next several days packing up and moving out, and spend the next several weeks, months, perhaps years, remembering what an exciting time it was, and thinking about what might have been. Tony Clark, CNN, Dallas.
After allowing his surrogates to spend weeks denouncing Ross Perot as everything from a temperamental rich man to a surveillance-prone Looney Tune, George Bush was quick to make a pitch for his ex-rival's support today. In a hastily arranged news conference in Wyoming, the president said he'd called Perot and congratulated him for truly energizing an awful lot of people. Then the incumbent went into the political wooing mode.
I would welcome his support and the support of those who have gotten behind him. We share the same principles with many of those people. We're going to work hard to win them over, get their support. But it was a good phone call, and I probably will be talking to Mr. Perot again before too long. But I see this as a positive development in a sense, because I am convinced that the conservatives who are supporting Ross Perot, the legions of conservative people will end up being with me.
The president is in Wyoming with his fishing buddy, James Baker. He swears he hasn't talked to the Secretary of State about working on the Bush-Quayle re-election team, but Bush adds all options are open. When we return, the sights and sounds of the fourth and final night of the 41st Democratic Convention.
Things were out of control. Lighting awful, heat. What heat? Superintendent's nightmare. So in comes Honeywell. They revamp our lighting controls, our heating and cooling equipment. Suddenly we're saving energy, money, the learning environment. 180-degree turn. This school's come a long way. The kids have too.
Honeywell, helping you control your world.
Tomorrow night, Ross Perot is our special guest. Ross has said no. In his first live interview since the press conference, we'll take your calls. Tomorrow night, 9 Eastern on CNN.
With each new day, you find a way to be your best.
Gillette Sensor for the closest, safest shave ever.
You know you gotta be a little better than the rest.
Only Gillette Sensor has spring-mounted twin blades that sense and adjust to every detail of every face. Gillette Sensor, when you're the best, there's no feeling like it.
Gillette, the best the man can get.
If you want to paint like a professional painter, you need to develop all 5 senses. Your sense of color, your sense of balance, your sense of pride and craftsmanship, and most importantly, your sense of direction. There's only one paint this good, and there's only one place you can get it. The pros know. Ask Sherwin-Williams.